The crystal glass feels cold and heavy in my hand, heavier than it should. The fine-stemmed goblet, part of a set my mother-in-law, Diana, insisted we register for, is filled with a pale, golden chardonnay. It's supposed to be a day of celebration, a day of gratitude. The air in Diana's formal dining room is thick with the scent of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and simmering resentment. My own. Across the table, my husband, Mark, catches my eye. His smile is a tight, polished thing, a warning shot fired across a field of starched linen and heirloom silverware. His eyes, the same warm brown that once made me feel safe, now hold a silent, desperate command. Don't. Don't you dare. I give him nothing back. My face is a mask of placid neutrality I have spent the last 4 months perfecting. It is my armor. Beside him, his brother, David, is laughing, his head tilted back, his heart so open and full of joy it physically hurts me to look at him. And next to David, the source of his joy, is Jessica, his fiancée. Her hair is a cascade of blonde waves, catching the light from the chandelier overhead. She's wearing a cream-colored sweater that makes her look soft, angelic. She lifts her own glass, her manicured fingers grazing the stem, and smiles at David. A smile of pure, unadulterated adoration. Or so it would seem. I know what that smile looks like when David isn't in the room. I've seen it directed at my husband, in fleeting moments caught in the reflection of a window, in the rearview mirror of my car. It's the same smile, but sharper, hungrier. I watch her, this woman I once thought would be my sister. I watch her reach for her napkin, a heavy damask cloth folded into the shape of a fan, and my heart begins to beat a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. It's time. With a steadiness that feels borrowed from a stranger, I lean forward slightly. My hand, holding a pristine white envelope, moves with deliberate grace. I slide it onto her bread plate, tucking one corner neatly between the pristine white napkin and the tines of her salad fork. It's a simple, elegant placement.
As if it were part of the table setting.
As if it belonged there. Inside is a court summons. My name versus my husband's. And hers. Mark's smile falters. The warning in his eyes turns to sheer, unadulterated panic. He knows. He doesn't know what's in the envelope, not specifically, but he knows I've finally brought the war to his front door. To his mother's front door. On Thanksgiving. The one day he ordered me to keep the peace. The whole world seemed to slow down in that moment. The clatter of the kitchen, the low hum of conversation, it all just faded into a distant buzz. If you've ever had a moment where time itself seems to hold its breath for you, a moment where everything is about to change forever, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribing helps me share more of these stories. It wasn't always like this. It's strange to think about now how normal everything was. How happy I was. Mark and I had a life built on a foundation of shared jokes and Sunday mornings spent in bed with a newspaper, the smell of coffee filling our small apartment. We met in college, a classic story of a library study session that turned into an all-night conversation about everything and nothing. He had this way of listening, of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. He was ambitious, driven, but he had a softness to him that I fell for instantly. Our first Thanksgiving with his family was a trial by fire. Diana, his mother, is a woman who wields tradition like a weapon. Her home is a museum of perfect moments, every cushion fluffed, every surface gleaming. She surveyed me with an appraising eye, her questions about my family, my career, my intentions, all delivered with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes.
But I passed.
I learned to make her pecan pie recipe exactly the way she liked it, with the pecans arranged in perfect concentric circles. I learned to laugh at his father's repetitive jokes. I learned to become a part of the perfect family portrait they presented to the world. And for a while, I was proud of my place in it. Mark and I bought a piece of land 2 years ago. A beautiful, wild patch of earth with old oak trees and a creek running through the back. It was our dream. We spent weekends walking the property, our boots sinking into the soft soil, planning where the kitchen window would go so we could watch the deer in the morning, where we'd plant a garden, where our future children would build a treehouse. He'd wrap his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder, and whisper, "This is it, Clara. This is forever." I believed him. I poured everything into that dream. My savings, my inheritance from my grandmother, my time, my energy. I was the one who met with the architects, the one who sourced the reclaimed wood for the floors, the one who spent hours poring over paint swatches and tile samples. It was our house, but it was my project. My heart, rendered in timber and stone. Then David met Jessica. He was utterly besotted from day one. And we were all happy for him. David is the gentler of the two brothers, a musician with a kind heart and a perpetually hopeful outlook on life. He deserved to be happy. Jessica was bubbly, charming, and seemed to adore him. She fit right into the family. She and I became fast friends, or so I thought. We'd go for lunch, shop together. She'd ask for my advice on everything from wedding venues to how to handle Diana's particular brand of passive aggression. I saw her as a sister, a confidant. I told her things. I told her about my frustrations with the house build, the stress of the budget. I even, in a moment of weakness, confessed my fear that Mark was pulling away, working too much, that we weren't connecting the way we used to. She'd listened with such sympathy, her hand on my arm. "He's just stressed about providing for you," she'd said, her voice a soothing balm. "He loves you more than anything." The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. It was tiny, almost invisible. Mark came home late, smelling of rain and a faint, floral perfume that wasn't mine. I commented on it lightly. "Smells like you were walking through a flower shop," he just grunted, shrugging off his coat. It was raining. Probably just someone's umbrella on the elevator. I let it go. Why wouldn't I? It was a plausible explanation. But it was the first stone in my shoe. A tiny, nagging discomfort. A week later, I was cleaning out his car and found a receipt from a restaurant I'd never heard of, a fancy little bistro downtown. It was for 2 people. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. Dated the previous Tuesday. The same day, he said, he was working late, eating a sad desk salad. The discomfort grew. I confronted him, holding the little slip of paper. He laughed it off.
Oh, that.
Yeah, I took a client out. Had to wine and dine him to close the deal. "You know how it is," he kissed my forehead, so casually, so convincingly, that I felt ashamed of my suspicion. I was being paranoid. He was working hard for us, for our house, for our future. I needed to be more supportive. So I tried. I packed him lunches. I sent him encouraging texts during the day. I planned a surprise weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains, a place we both loved. But when I told him, he was irritated. "Clara, I can't just take off.
I have a huge deadline."
You should have checked with me. The man who once would have dropped everything for a spontaneous adventure with me now looked at me like I was a burden. The distance between us became a chasm. He slept with his back to me, his body a rigid wall in our bed. Our conversations became purely logistical. "Did you pay the electric bill?" The contractor called about the permits. The easy intimacy that had been the bedrock of our relationship was gone, replaced by a strained, brittle silence. I felt like I was going crazy. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for clues. Was it me? Had I done something? I became a ghost in my own life, haunting the hallways of a relationship that was already dead. I confided in Jessica over coffee one afternoon, my voice trembling as I admitted how lost I felt. She held my hand across the table, her eyes wide with concern. "Oh, Clara, I'm so sorry. Men can be so dense. David does the same thing sometimes when he's stressed about a new song. Mark is probably just overwhelmed with the house and work. Give him space.
He'll come back to you."
He always does. Her words were a life raft, and I clung to them. She was right. I just needed to be patient. I just needed to weather the storm. The storm, however, was not a passing squall. It was a Category 5 hurricane, and it was heading directly for me. The real proof, the kind you can't explain away, came from the most mundane of sources: our shared phone plan. I was online, paying the bill, when I noticed the data usage on Mark's line was astronomical. Curious, I clicked to see the detailed statement. And there it was. A log of hundreds of calls and thousands of text messages. All to the same number. A number I didn't recognize. My hands started to shake. This wasn't a client. This wasn't his mother or his brother. This was something else. With a sense of dread so profound it felt like I was moving through water, I saved the number to my phone's contacts under a fake name. New caterer. Then I opened up a messaging app, the one all our friends used. The app that shows you the profile picture associated with a phone number. I typed in new caterer, I hit search. And her face appeared. Jessica. Smiling. The same angelic smile she gave David. The same concerned expression she gave me. I think I stopped breathing. The world tilted on its axis, the screen blurring in front of my eyes. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. Not Jessica. Not David's Jessica. The betrayal was so immense, so layered. It was suffocating. It wasn't just my husband. It was my friend. It was his brother's future wife. It was a tangled, ugly knot of deceit that implicated the entire family I had worked so hard to become a part of. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at her picture. The coffee I'd been drinking grew cold. The sun shifted in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room floor. I felt nothing and everything all at once. A hollow ache in my chest, a roaring in my ears. I scrolled through the call log again. The late-night calls that lasted for hours. The constant stream of texts, even on weekends when he was sitting right next to me, supposedly answering work emails on his phone. They had been laughing at me, both of them, for months. My first instinct was to scream, to break things, to call Mark and unleash a torrent of rage and pain, to call David and tell him his perfect fiancé was a snake. But a strange, cold calm washed over me. An explosion would be satisfying for a moment, but it would be messy. They would deny it. They would turn it around on me, call me hysterical, crazy. Mark was a master of that. He'd done it for months, slowly eroding my sanity until I doubted my own perceptions.
No.
They didn't deserve a quick, clean emotional outburst. They deserved something far more deliberate. That night, when Mark came home, I played my part. I asked about his day. I had dinner on the table. I smiled. But it was a new kind of smile. It was thin and sharp, and it didn't reach my eyes. Inside, I was a block of ice. The grief was still there, a massive, black hole inside me, but it was frozen solid. And around it something else was beginning to form. A plan. The next few weeks were an exercise in supreme self-control. I became an actress, playing the part of the slightly worried, but ultimately dutiful, wife. I continued to meet with the contractors for the house. I continued to have lunch with Jessica, listening to her gush about her wedding plans, about the dress she'd chosen, about her future with David. Every word was a knife twisting in my gut, but I smiled and nodded and offered suggestions. I was gathering intelligence. I was watching. I saw the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was paying attention. A shared glance over the dinner table at Diana's house that lasted a second too long. The way his hand brushed her back as she passed him in the hallway, a gesture so fleeting and possessive it made my stomach clench. They were careless, arrogant. They believed I was too stupid, too blinded by love, to ever see the truth. My grief began to curdle into a cold, hard rage. It was a quiet rage, not the fiery, explosive kind. It was methodical. I started digging. I opened a new bank account in my own name. I started quietly moving money, small amounts at first, from our joint savings. I hired a private investigator, a discreet, expensive man who promised results. He delivered. Photos. Grainy, long-lens shots of them meeting at a hotel on the other side of town, kissing in a dimly lit parking garage, holding hands in a park where they thought no one would know them. But the real turning point, The moment my plan crystallized from a vague notion of revenge into a precise, surgical strike came when I found the emails. Mark was careless. He had a second, private email account, but he'd saved the password in his browser on our home computer. I found it by accident looking for a tax document. And there it was. An entire world of their betrayal, laid out in black and white. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a life. Our life. They talked about the house, my house, as if it were already theirs. Once Clara is out of the picture, we can change the layout of the master bathroom, Jessica had written. I've always wanted a bigger closet, Mark had replied. Anything you want. We just have to be patient. Let her finish paying for the build-out. Then I'll end it. It'll be cleaner that way.
Cleaner.
They were using me, using my money, my inheritance, my dream, to build their future. They weren't just cheating. They were committing fraud. They were thieves. They were waiting for me to complete my masterpiece, our dream home, only to kick me out and move in themselves. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stole the air from my lungs. I sat there, in the dark, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, and I felt the last vestiges of my sadness burn away, leaving behind something hard and sharp and diamond bright. I was no longer a victim. I was an instrument of their destruction. And I knew exactly when and where the reckoning would come. Thanksgiving. Diana's holy grail of holidays. The one day of the year where the facade of the perfect family was polished to its highest shine. It was their stage, their sanctuary, and I was going to burn it to the ground, but not with fire, with something colder, quieter, and far more devastating. The truth. I went to see a lawyer, a woman with a reputation for being a shark, recommended by a friend. I laid out everything on her polished mahogany desk. The phone records, the PI's photos, the printed emails. She read through it all, her expression unreadable. When she was done, she looked up at me, a flicker of something like admiration in her eyes. "They're not just cheating on you," she said, her voice crisp. "They're conspiring to defraud you. This isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is a whole other level of ugly." We spent the next 2 hours crafting a strategy. It was brilliant. It was brutal. It involved trusts, forensic accountants, and a carefully timed legal assault. She advised me to keep playing my part, to let them get more comfortable, more arrogant, to let them keep digging their own grave. "And one more thing," she said as I was leaving. "That joint savings account they've been dipping into for their little hotel trysts?
Keep putting money into it.
Your post-marital earnings. We want a clean, clear paper trail of them stealing marital assets for the affair. Let them think they're getting away with it." So I did. I became the perfect, oblivious wife. The pressure was immense. There were days I thought I would shatter. I'd be in the grocery store and see a couple holding hands and have to duck into an aisle to choke back a sob. I'd hear a song on the radio that was our song and have to pull the car over because I couldn't see through the tears. The gaslighting got worse. Mark started picking fights over nothing, a classic tactic to create distance and justify his eventual departure. "Why is the house such a mess?" he'd snap, stepping over a pair of my shoes. "Can't you do anything right?" He was trying to paint me as the problem, laying the groundwork for his narrative. The narrative where he was the long-suffering husband who just couldn't take it anymore. His mother, Diana, became his willing accomplice. She'd call me, her voice dripping with false concern. "Clara, dear, Mark seems so unhappy lately. You have to understand, men like my son, they need to feel admired. Are you making sure he feels admired?" It took every ounce of my strength not to scream into the phone. The week before Thanksgiving was the final trial. The house was nearly finished. The final payment to the contractor was due. Mark brought it up over a tense, silent dinner. "We need to transfer the last $100,000 from the main savings account tomorrow." I just nodded, my fork scraping against the plate. "Okay," I said, my voice hollow. He thought he was one step closer to his goal. He had no idea that I'd already been to the bank that morning. I had met with the manager, armed with the power of attorney and documentation from my lawyer. I had frozen the account. Not just frozen it, but initiated a legal review based on fraudulent activity. The money was safe. His access was gone. He just didn't know it yet. Then, 2 nights before the holiday, he delivered the final, fatal blow to any lingering shred of doubt I might have had. He came into the bedroom as I was getting ready for bed, his face a mask of stern disappointment. He stood there, arms crossed, and looked at me with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I know you've been in a mood for months. I don't know what your problem is, and frankly, I don't care. But Thanksgiving is my mother's favorite day.
It's important to this family.
So whatever is going on with you, you'll suck it up. You will show up, you will smile, and you will not, under any circumstances, ruin my family's Thanksgiving. Do you understand me?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had loved. The man I had promised to spend my life with. And I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty calm. The eye of the hurricane. "I understand completely," I said, my voice perfectly even. And I did. I understood that he was a monster cloaked in the skin of a charming husband. I understood that he felt entitled to my compliance, to my silence, to my money, to my life. I understood that he believed he held all the power. And I understood, with absolute, diamond-hard certainty, that he was wrong. So now, here we are. The stage is set. The actors are all in place. The heavy damask napkin, the gleaming salad fork, and the crisp white envelope containing the first domino. Jessica looks up from her conversation with David, her perfect, angelic smile faltering as she finally notices the envelope on her plate. "Oh, what's this?" she asks, her voice light and curious. She picks it up. Her eyes flick to my name, then to Mark's, printed neatly on the front. A tiny frown creases her brow. David leans over. "What is it, honey?" "I don't know," she murmurs, her fingers fumbling with the seal. Mark is frozen. Utterly, completely frozen. His face has gone a pale, sickly white. He looks like a man who has just seen a ghost. My ghost. The ghost of the woman he thought he had successfully buried under months of lies and manipulation. Diana, from the head of the table, claps her hands together, oblivious. "All right, everyone. Let's go around and say what we're thankful for before we eat. It's tradition. I'll start." But no one is listening to her. Every eye is on Jessica as she pulls the papers from the envelope. Her eyes scan the first page. The legal jargon, the bolded names. Clara Miller, plaintiff, versus Mark Miller and Jessica Vance, defendants. The color drains from her face. I watch it happen in slow motion. The rosy blush on her cheeks vanishes, replaced by a waxy, translucent pallor. Her hand begins to tremble, the papers rattling softly. She looks up, her eyes wide with terror, and she finds mine. In my gaze, she doesn't find anger. She doesn't find tears. She finds a calm, placid lake of absolute certainty. She finds her end. "What is it?" David asks again, his voice tight with confusion and a dawning sense of dread. He reaches for the papers, but she snatches them away, clutching them to her chest. "It's nothing," she whispers, her voice a strangled gasp. "It's a mistake." "It's no mistake," I say. My voice is quiet, but it cuts through the tension in the room like a shard of glass. Everyone turns to look at me. Diana stops mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open. Mark's father lowers his wine glass. David stares at me, his brow furrowed. Mark finally finds his voice. It's a low growl. "Clara."
Don't.
"Don't what, Mark?" I ask, my voice still perfectly level. "Don't speak the truth? I think we're long past that, don't you?" I stand up slowly, my own napkin dropping unheeded to the floor. I place my hands flat on the table, leaning forward slightly. I am the prosecutor, and this is my courtroom. For the last 8 months, I begin, my voice gaining strength with every word. My husband, Mark, and his brother's fiancée, Jessica, have been having an affair. A collective gasp ripples around the table. David recoils from Jessica as if she were on fire.
What? No.
That's not true. Clara, what are you saying? His voice is a plea, begging me to take it back, to say it's all a horrible joke. I wish it weren't true, David, I say, and my voice softens with genuine pity for him. He is the only other victim in this room.
I truly do.
But they have been meeting in secret, staying in hotels, exchanging thousands of texts and late-night phone calls, planning their future together. Jessica starts to cry, pathetic, gulping sobs. She's lying. David, baby, she's making it all up. She's crazy. Am I? I ask, and I reach into the bag resting by my chair. I pull out a thick manila folder. I open it and begin to place exhibits on the table, like a dealer laying out a winning hand. Exhibit A, phone records. Highlighting every call, every text between their numbers for the last 8 months, I slide a sheaf of papers across the table toward David. Exhibit B. I continue, my voice cold and steady. Photographs, I lay them out one by one. Mark and Jessica kissing in his car. Mark and Jessica checking into a hotel, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. Mark and Jessica having an intimate dinner at the bistro he claimed was a client meeting. David stares at the photos, his face crumbling. The open, joyful man from 10 minutes ago is gone, replaced by a hollow shell of disbelief and agony. He looks at Jessica, then at his brother, his best man. Mark, is this true? Mark finds his rage. It's his only defense. He slams his fist on the table, making the glasses jump. This is insane. Clara, you have lost your mind. You're trying to ruin this family because you're a jealous, vindictive. Don't, I interrupt, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Don't you dare try to gaslight me again. Not here. Not now. I pull out the final stack of papers. The emails. And Exhibit C. The most damning of all. Emails between the two of them. Discussing their affair. Discussing their plans. I turn my attention to Diana, whose face is a frozen mask of horror. Not horror at her son's infidelity, I realize. Horror at the public spectacle. The shattering of her perfect family portrait. They were planning their future in our house, Diana. I say, my voice ringing with a terrible clarity. The house I have spent the last 2 years of my life and my entire inheritance building. They were just waiting for me to finish paying for it. Jessica was very excited about redesigning the master closet. Isn't that right, Jessica? Jessica just sobs, shaking her head, unable to form words. David finally pushes back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He stands over his fiancée, his face a mess of tears and fury. Did you write this? He chokes out, pointing a trembling finger at one of the printed emails. An email where she calls David sweet but so naive and says she can't wait to be with a real man like Mark. This is the moment. The climax of their deception. Mark sees his world collapsing. He lunges across the table, trying to grab the papers, to destroy the evidence. You psycho! You had no right, he screams, his face contorted with rage. But I am prepared for this. This is the part of the plan that my lawyer and I rehearsed. This is the plot twist. The moment the betrayer gets completely, utterly blindsided. Actually, Mark, I have every right, I say calmly, taking a step back from the table as his father and David restrain him. Because while you two were busy planning your new life with my money, I was busy talking to my lawyer. And a forensic accountant. A new kind of silence falls over the room. A confused, fearful silence. You see, I continue, addressing the whole table now, you weren't just cheating. You were stealing. The joint savings account you've been using for your romantic getaways? The one you drained for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for your mistress? I look directly at Mark, whose struggles have ceased. He's staring at me, a new, terrible understanding dawning in his eyes. For the past 3 months, on the advice of my counsel, every deposit into that account has been from my postmarital salary. And every withdrawal you two have made has been meticulously documented. You haven't been spending our money. You've been stealing my personal income to fund your affair, creating a perfect, irrefutable paper trail of financial infidelity and dissipation of marital assets. My lawyer calls it a slam dunk. Jessica lets out a small, wounded sound. Oh, but it gets so much better, I say, a thin, bitter smile touching my lips for the first time. You were so eager to get that final payment made on the house. The last $100,000. You must have been so disappointed when you tried to make the transfer this morning and found the account was frozen. Mark's face goes slack. He looks like he's been punched in the gut. He had no idea. He walked in here tonight thinking he was still in control. And the house itself. I continue, delivering the killing blow. The land it's built on? I bought it with the inheritance my grandmother left me. Premarital assets, Mark. The deed, the title, the permits, they are all exclusively in my name. The money I spent building it was also from a trust you could never touch. You thought you were waiting for me to finish building your dream house. But you were just supervising the construction of my new, mark-free life.
So, thank you.
I suppose I should be grateful for that. The room is absolutely silent, save for Jessica's ragged breathing. David has collapsed back into his chair, his face in his hands. Diana looks like she might faint. Mark just stares at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, no sound coming out. He's been completely and utterly checkmated. He is nothing. Less than nothing. He has the debt he's racked up, the brother he has betrayed, and the mistress who has been exposed as a common thief. So, to answer your command from the other night, Mark, I say, my voice ringing with a final, chilling finality.
No.
I will not keep it together. I will not protect your secrets. And I have, with great pleasure, ruined your family's Thanksgiving. You will be served with divorce papers on Monday morning. I believe Jessica already has her copy. I pick up my purse from the floor. I don't look at any of them again. I turn my back on the wreckage of their lives, on the shattered pieces of their perfect family portrait, and I walk away. The sound of Diana finally letting out a piercing wail follows me down the hall, but I don't flinch. I open the front door, step out into the crisp November air, and close it gently behind me. The silence in my car is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. The drive away from that house felt like emerging from underwater. I just drove, with no destination in mind, the suburban streets giving way to the highway, the city lights a blur in my rearview mirror.
I didn't cry.
The tears had all been spent months ago, in the dead of night, muffled into my pillow so Mark wouldn't hear. What I felt instead was a profound, hollow emptiness. A void where my life used to be. The rage that had fueled me for weeks had burned itself out, leaving behind only the cold, gray ash of what was. I ended up at a cheap motel off the interstate, the kind with a flickering neon sign and thin, scratchy towels. I checked in under my maiden name. It felt strange and right all at the same time. Lying on the stiff, unfamiliar bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, the full weight of my actions settled over me. I had won. I had achieved the justice I sought. I had exposed them, stripped them of their power, and protected my future. But victory felt strangely like loss. I had detonated a bomb in the middle of my own life, and I was standing in the epicenter of the blast. The family I had married into was gone. The man I had loved was a stranger. The future I had planned was a fantasy. The legal battle was, as my lawyer had predicted, swift and brutal.
For them.
Faced with the mountain of evidence, Mark had no choice but to surrender. The fraud charges were leveraged to ensure he walked away with nothing but his personal effects and a mountain of legal debt. The house was mine, free and clear. Jessica disappeared. I heard through the grapevine that David threw her out that same night. She tried to sue me for defamation and emotional distress, but the case was laughed out of court. The last I heard, she had moved back to her hometown, disgraced and penniless. David was the one person I felt a pang of guilt for. I had to hurt him to save myself. He called me about a month later. His voice was quiet, broken. He didn't blame me. He thanked me for telling him the truth, however brutal it had been. He said he was leaving town, going on the road with his band, trying to find himself again. We wished each other well, Two survivors of the same shipwreck, and I never spoke to him again. Mark tried to fight, of course. He sent me raging, pathetic emails, alternating between threats and pleas for forgiveness. He blamed me for everything. He called me cruel, a monster. I never responded. I blocked his number, his email, and every form of social media. He ceased to exist for me. Diana, his mother, tried to launch a smear campaign against me among our mutual acquaintances, painting me as an unstable, vengeful woman. But the truth, in all its ugly detail, had a way of leaking out. People knew.
They saw.
The perfect family portrait was shattered, and everyone could see the rotten canvas underneath. The first year was the hardest. The silence in the now-finished house was deafening. Every room echoed with memories, with ghosts of a life that was never real. I thought about selling it, about running away and starting over somewhere new. But then I realized that would be letting them win. They wanted this house. They had tried to steal it. Keeping it, living in it, making it my own, that was the final victory. So I stayed. I painted the walls a color Mark would have hated. I bought furniture that was entirely my taste. I planted a garden full of wildflowers instead of the perfectly manicured rose bushes Diana had insisted on. I turned the room that was supposed to be his office into my own personal library, filling it with books and art and light. Slowly, painstakingly, I exorcised their ghosts. I reclaimed my space. I reclaimed my life. There are still moments, of course. A scent, a song, a turn of phrase that brings it all rushing back. The phantom limb of a marriage, aching with a loss that is both real and imagined. Betrayal leaves a scar that never fully fades. It changes the geography of your soul. But it doesn't have to be your final destination. It took a long time to sweep up the ashes of that life, to learn how to be alone, and then to learn how to be happy alone. But from ashes, something new can grow. Stronger, fiercer, and more beautiful for having survived the fire. I am no longer the woman who arranged pecans in perfect circles to please her mother-in-law. I am the woman who burned that entire world down to save herself. And for that, on this Thanksgiving and every one after, I am truly, profoundly grateful. Thanks for being here with me through this. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life, and I'm grateful for every one of you.